Welcome. You are at the CCC. Whoa, can you turn that down?
Yeah.
Now I sound like Anthony. Where there are no outside issues. I am Louie Lou, and my pronouns are he and him. I'm recovered for crystal meth and alcohol, and I am always in search of balance. And each week we strive to foster a brave space where we can engage in conversations centered around topics of recovery. And our intention is to hold and inspire better spaces for people in recovery. These do. But before we do that, please like, comment, and share on this episode. And since it's podcast exclusive, please make sure you comment and like. At any rate, and now the disclaimer. Anthony does this all the time. The disclaimer, the thoughts and opinions expressed on this at the CCC are ours and ours alone. We do not represent anyone but ourselves. And in other words, we are just a couple of friends behind a mic here to entertain you. And of course, everything we say is for general purpose only. Woohoo! Okay, so this is like the first time that I've done this alone, and I have to say it because Anthony did this to me while I was sick. If anything goes wrong, it's Anthony's fault. We absolutely miss you, Anthony, and I hope you're enjoying. Isn't he in Aruba?
Yeah.
Girl,
Screw Anthony.
Girl, I know, exactly. Really? Okay, it's all good. So, I want to talk about first before I introduce these two lovely people with you. So when we decided that we were going to do this, I'm on the programs committee, and this is coming live from the Finding Fellowship retreat. It's we call it Tweaker Camp, but it's closely related to Crystal Meth Anonymous, and it's an opportunity, four day kind of weekend getaway retreat. How many people normally attend?
90.
Like about 90 people, and so we thought this would be a great opportunity to expose these children to the podcast. And we incorporated it with a workshop that was done last year. It was called The First 5 Years. And so today we're going to talk about the first five years. I'm going to ask them some questions, guide the conversation, and then give you all an opportunity if you want to participate. We are recording, so if you're shy, it's okay. Get over it. Also, just what I told them is we have our rating is explicit, so there are no rules to the conversation. The whole idea is just to have a conversation. The goal is, if you want to talk about it, if it brings you drama, our tagline is there are no outside issues. You get to talk about it. So I have some questions for you. These are questions we normally start with, and I want to give you both an opportunity to ask. So, Sage, why don't you introduce yourself, and just quickly, and then I'll give Erin an opportunity to do it as well.
Sure. Hi, my name's Sage. Pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm originally from Huntington Beach, California. I've been living in San Francisco for about the past 9 years. I am definitely a crystal meth addict in recovery. My sobriety date is December 1st of last year, so I have about a little over 10 months. And happy to be here.
Right on. Go ahead.
Hi, my name's Aaron D. My sobriety date is April 7th, 2019. And I'm from San Francisco. I've lived there 30 years, and before that I grew up in Michigan.
You two are amazing because that was part of my first question. Now I want to know what brought you to this recovery. And I say this recovery because if you've had recovery experience before, what brought you to recovery? And you can chime in, whoever.
I would say for me, the first meeting I ever went to was the T for T meeting at the Castro Country Club. It was specifically an AA-focused meeting, but since then I've really...
Wait, don't talk about that here. No, I'm kidding.
Since having gone to that meeting and kind of branched out, I've definitely really appreciated the CMA fellowship. Specifically, I feel like there's no place like home when it comes to tweakers. Definitely feel like my experience is a lot more understood and validated in the CMA fellowship, and...
Yeah, these are my people. You wanted to know how we got here.
Yeah, how'd you get here?
I mean, incomprehensible demoralization got me here. But then the pull of this community, how fun this community is, how fucking crazy this community is, has kept me here.
Yeah. What I will share is the same with me. I am definitely an alcoholic, and I'm definitely a crystal meth addict.
Yeah.
And early recovery, I think that I was really uncomfortable with how kind of straight-laced AA seemed. I now know that they're batshit crazy as we are.
Yeah.
But the truth of it is, I needed the kind of frenetic kind of craziness of the tweaker energy. And it's interesting now that I have the time that I have. It's like I go to meetings and I'm all judging people. How dare you? Stop that. Sit still. Crazy. Okay, so now we're gonna go deeper. You okay with crying? No.
I've cried like 6 times today, so I'm
gonna Barbara Walters you. So, what is your relationship with a higher power? Your higher power?
My relationship, it's shifted. It shifts every, I'd say, year as I'm working with the steps, working with sponsees, working with my sponsor. A lot of the work we do with my sponsees is having them go interview other folks about what their higher powers are, which means they come back to me and share that. So that can't help but help morph what my understanding is. What I do know is that my higher power works through others and through my connections with others. And being in the rooms, you are with people that are trying to make their lives better. Mm-hmm. And just through that connection, my higher power expresses itself to me. Yeah.
Absolutely. How about you, Sage?
I think for me, when I first...
Eat the mic.
When I first came into the meetings,
just so you know, you all can hear, but we were trying to make sure that it registers when on. Yeah, so I don't want to have to say it again.
I'm gonna just sit here.
That works. That works for me. Yeah.
When I first came into the meetings, I really was anti any kind of religion. This is obviously not a religious group, but really was just anti the idea of any kind of higher power. And since having been in the rooms and seeing so many other fellows establish a relationship with a higher power, it doesn't have to be God or any form of denomination. I've really learned from the other fellows, and I think that's why it takes a village, is because I've been able to look up to and look within myself as to what a higher power looks like. For me, having seen so many other women come in the program and then leave shortly after it, and specifically a lot of other sisters pass away from this disease, I've kind of created or connected with a higher power that is a woman and that is trans, and that I'm able to, kind of do in their honor, so to say.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. I agree with the idea of my higher power is everything. And constantly growing and changing, because I'm constantly growing and changing. There are no limits to, like I always say, like, if you have issues or if you have a problem that you feel like your higher power can't handle, your higher power is not big enough for you. And so it's something living, kind of like our sex idea, but we're not going to talk about that. Okay. So we're today, the podcast. So at the CCC podcast, we're not primarily like a 12-step, like we try to kind of like not have barriers with that, but it just so happens that myself and also my co-host is not here, and that we really kind of this is 12 steps, steeped in it, which is fine. I mean, it's like, I can only speak about what I know. We usually try to have other people bring their opinions and thoughts. But
how does that usually play out?
Well, what we do is we talk over them. No, what happens is depending on what the theme or the topic is, we invite people to participate in the conversation. They bring their experience as recovered people.
Even from beyond just the program.
Unless it's specifically like to interview, that we don't do all the time. Like right now, I feel I'm interviewing or whatever, but usually it's just a conversation. And so they bring their experience, and then they kind of like when you're working with a sponsor. Like, I'm going to share, the best way for me to do is not necessarily give you advice, but to share my experience. Mm-hmm. And we know, most of us are here at 12-step, all of us here at 12-step. We have a language that, if I went into some random place and I was talking to somebody for enough time, I could tell exactly. So it
saves a lot of time.
Exactly. And you know what's nice about, I think, this format? We want to normalize, like as much as I would like to believe this is the only way to do it, this is not the only way to do it. And I think that we all have things in common. A lot of times it's usually the language is different, but really we're all going for the same goal. I want peace. I want serenity. I want to be happy. I want to expand myself. So now, after having said all that, blah, blah, blah. See, this is how it works. It's like, You say one thing, and
Do we jump in and interrupt you?
You can do if you can interrupt me. Keep it.
If it's possible.
I mean, it's like I'm just keeping it real. It's like humility. I'm humble. What I want to know is like, what was the process like for you finding your sponsor? Like, because this is something when folks come in, especially the 12-step, like, it seems like there are these rules and we have to follow them rigidly. And the truth of it is that there are no rules. And sometimes it takes a little while for you to figure out. So for you, what was the process like, if it was for the first sponsor or for now?
Right. That's interesting because we just came from the sponsorship panel. Where we were talking about this. And like I said down there, and like you mentioned before, this is my first 5 years. And the first 10 years I had 6 different sponsors. And one of the topics that came up before was, moving on from sponsors because I thought they weren't giving me what I thought I needed at that point in my recovery. And this time around, I've only had one sponsor. Well, I had one, but he moved away, and then the one I have right now, I'm sticking with. And my criteria was...
Is that because he's in the audience?
Yeah, that's... and I'll tell you, what it's really about later. He's blackmailing me.
Oh, I thought you were going to say it was a blackmail. I'm like, what? Oh, my God.
Yeah. Blink twice if you're safe. This time around, my criteria was pretty simple. Somebody who I could relate to, somebody who, had what I wanted, but somebody also that was like, I was going to run into, someone I was going to go to meetings with, someone who the relationship was going to be very effortless. Because in the past, scheduling was a problem or location was a problem. And just having someone where it was like guaranteed that I was going to see them multiple times a week and stay connected, like that was very important to me because it not only reflected a strength of relationship, but it also helped foster like much more awareness of what was going on in my life, what was going on in his life. And again, that higher power thing that I mentioned before about how my higher power expresses itself through my connection to others. That's the practicality of that criteria was really important to me.
I'm sorry, I'm paying attention. I feel like Anthony because it's something I want to get back to you on. But Sage, how about you?
I would say for me, when I came in the room, I did not want to work with a man. I had a huge. I still to this day have a really uncomfortable relationship with men. And I think that a lot of that is because I'm a trans woman and I've had difficult relationships with straight men. I've had difficult relationships with gay men. And I really wanted to work with a trans woman. And I was going to the T for T meeting for about 6 months or so. And I met a trans woman in there who was as crazy and perverted as me, who was a speaker at this at last night's speaker meeting. So some of you may know who I'm talking about.
Did she tell you about truffles?
Yes. But I was just so gravitated to her. I saw her. I thought, oh my God, this is a disgusting and totally inappropriate trans woman. I have to work with her. And I approached her in the first couple months of my recovery and asked if she would sponsor me. And she actually said no. Because of mental health reasons, she only worked with one sponsee at a time. And I totally felt that because I also have BPD and PTSD and I'm crazy even without meth in my system. And so that was like a boundary and an identity that I really respected. And a couple months later, she came up to me out of the blue without me having ever talked to her or asked her again and said, hey, my last sponsee and I are no longer working together. Would you like to work with me? And that was one of the biggest miracles of this program. I know just having been in the other meeting about sponsorship, some folks, it takes a couple sponsors to get the right fit. And I feel really blessed that I imagine I'll have a really strong relationship with her for a minute now.
Right on. So I wanted to go back. It's like, I normally don't do this part. I'm over there and then Anthony's all taking notes. I love this. I'm going to get a notepad the next time. I'm going to be out of control. So, I know that you sponsor folks, and so how was your relationship with you figuring out and finding your sponsor? How does it help you being a sponsor? How does it help you with this process?
Yeah,
do you understand what okay, so let me see if I can formulate the question in a different way. Go ahead.
So how does finding your sponsor, how does that help you become a better sponsor to your sponsees?
Absolutely, because is it that you are, we have a little compassion, because I see folks come in and especially if I imagine where I was at that time, it makes it easier for me to kind of, approach to make, you know what I'm saying?
Right. I would say the 3 of the sponsees I have right now were introduced to me. And again, kind of that organic, being in the community, being visible, being connected, being of service. It organically happened that the sponsees that were absolutely perfect for me were presented by somebody that was like, you should work with Aaron.
Oh.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing.
That's a gift, because I will talk to someone if they're introduced, but I usually have found that for me, and I believe in the organic, like I don't put any pressure if they come to me. A lot of times I won't raise my hand, and if a person, wants to have a conversation, we can have a conversation and figure from there. The other part, for anyone who's kind of concerned, I believe wholeheartedly that sponsorship is not marriage. And I think that whatever reason you decide to choose a person for sponsorship or no longer work with this person, that's on you. I think that I've had 5 sponsors, and I've worked the steps each of those times. And I thought that first sponsor, I was going to have that sponsor forever. We're going to have this amazing relationship. They were going to meet my kids and whatever. But no, shit happened. They moved away. Mm-hmm. People relapse, whatever. Yeah. I decide I don't want it more. What I will say is, I'm so grateful when my sponsees are able to come to me and say I need something different. Mm-hmm. Because if I take that shit personally, that's not about them. That's about me.
And you leave a lasting impact. I know many of your ex-sponsees, and they're constantly, referencing stuff that they learned from you.
Absolutely. No, and it's great. It's like, wait a minute, they were listening? Because half the time, it's all good. But yeah, they're listening. So I want to know from both of you, let's start with you, Sage. What were some of the challenges that you faced coming in? I mean, because for some people on the outside looking in, it can seem like, oh God, this is amazing. Everybody, it was so easy. It was so effortless. And recovery is not easy, but it's like, are there any challenges that maybe stand out to you?
Yeah, it definitely was not easy. I would say one of the initial most difficult things for me, honestly, was smoking weed. I was going to AA initially because T for T was an AA structured meeting, and the only
loophole, huh?
Yeah,
they didn't say anything about weed, so I could smoke
don't.
it.
the only rule here is that you just have to have a desire to stop drinking. And I was like, okay, well, shit, I don't, but I can still smoke weed, right? CMA was a little more cutthroat in that sense, and it was really hard for me to go cold turkey off weed. I think that was probably my first drug of choice, even before meth. And the way I stopped smoking weed was I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to get high off crystal and then get rid of it.
That's one way to do it.
And it did it. And I'm in a weird way grateful for that relapse, because it got me here, and I'm like totally cold turkey sober now. I think the other thing that a lot of folks, men, women, whatnot, struggle with is just the concept of sex. I was definitely a sex tweaker. I could not be smoking if I wasn't like taking a bong from my mouth and then putting a dick in, and then, vice versa.
I love how effortlessly it came out. Some people are like, can I say this? I'm like, yeah, dick.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah, but I mean, for me, like, sex and crystal were just so intertwined, and it was really hard for me, whether it was dating or just hooking up, to have sex that wasn't driven by sex.
Sex that wasn't driven by sex.
Sex that wasn't
Explain.
driven by drugs.
I got you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Aaron?
There's a couple different ways I could answer that. That question was what was difficult about coming into recovery?
Any challenges that stand out?
Okay, so like the metaphor I would use this time around is like I had spent 10 years working a pretty hard program. There were some things that were could have been more optimal during those 10 years, but I threw that all away and was out there smoking meth daily for 2.5 years. And then making the decision to come back and then being at the bottom of that hill again and looking up that hill that I had trudged up for 10 years, that 10-year-long hill, and being like, how the fuck am I going to do this again? How the fuck am I going to do this again? And that's when it was clear to me I needed to try something completely different. So I don't know if any of you remember me from my first 10 years. Louis, I remember I would like sneak into Castro meetings every once in a while. But I never participated.
I was pretty self-absorbed, so if you didn't come over,
it didn't look like you were.
If you didn't come over and say hi to me, it's like I'm all, or
yeah.
Still that way. Yeah.
But I'm pumped. I don't need my. I got my own sound. But I'm pumped.
And what I needed to do that differently was basically park my ass in the Castro Country Club and have that be my center of gravity. And that was super, super, super uncomfortable for me. I'm not a joiner. I was simultaneously freaked out by all of you. The laughter was grating on me, and I so desperately wanted it to. But it was so foreign to me. I just couldn't wrap my head around how any of this was attainable for me. But I sat and held onto that seat in that front room at those noon CMA meetings day after day after day after day, volunteering behind the counter, so uncomfortable. And then just that fear and that otherness with everybody just started to erode away. And that hill, I'm finally feeling myself crest above that hill that I didn't think I was ever going to be able to walk back up. And it's a pretty good feeling. And there are a lot of things that are happening right now that are helping me reflect on how these past 5 years have been the hardest years of my life, but like have given me what I've been looking for my whole life. Yeah.
Right on. Now, I think the two of you is like what I know about you and what I continue to learn about you constantly surprises me. I absolutely adore you. I love you. It's like, I don't say that lightly because it's like, I think that it's a gift that we have, like all of these potential relationships, that can go deeper than just like on the surface. And having said that, what about recovery has surprised you the most? Do you like that? That was smooth. Yeah.
That question was surprising. I think honestly, two things. One is my relationship with a higher power now. I grew up atheist, and like I had said earlier, just no interest in connecting to anything. I think having done the step work, I realize now that I thought I was my own God. And I thought that I was the only thing that could lift me out of any kind of struggle in my life. And yeah, like I pray every morning now, and I, go to sleep and I make a moral inventory, and I try and do in her name and the other girls that have passed, like their name. And even identifying as like a spiritual person is just wild for me. Sometimes I have to check myself and I'm like, oh, I feel so weird, like a white woman witch or something. But I really do feel that way. And I think the other thing that's been really surprising is the different types of people that I've not only met, but become close to in recovery. I say this a lot, half satirical, but half honest. It's like, I really just didn't want to be around gay men. And a main...
Same.
Has it? I hopefully finish your thought, but I was going to ask you, how has this helped that part because I was when you were saying it earlier, I was thinking, are you comfortable now? It's like,
So, well, to finish, yes,
Yeah.
yes, I'm more comfortable now. I was really uncomfortable initially because I navigate just trying to be a woman, like first and foremost, and being around any kind of queer community for me felt like, I was going to be visibly trans. It was going to be obvious. People would be able to clock me just because I'm hanging out in the Castro, and I never hang out in the Castro. But I've learned that, queer people, obviously, gay men, but like queer people in general are just like really amazing at holding space for one another. They often say too much shit and have too much drama going on, but they're really good at holding space for one another. Of course, there's times now when I have the occasional like dysphoric moment. I'm like, okay, these queens are being too much. I'm going to go hang out with my girls. But for the most part, like I feel comfortable. And even outside of just, cis-identified gay men, meeting so many different types of people, being around straight men and cisgender women and other trans people who I don't necessarily agree with politically or whatnot. Like you just kind of have to learn how to navigate being in community with people that you may not like, but you're always going to love.
are you always going to love them? I'm just keeping it real.
I love from afar.
Did that just sound nice? Yeah.
You always love them, but you
from
may
across
not
the
like
street.
them.
Exactly.
No, I mean, there's been a couple folks who, whether it was from using days or even now, that have reached out and want to, rekindle a relationship. And I'm like, I'm going to love you from afar.
Mm-hmm. Or meet you at a meeting, girl.
I don't.
Not even that, huh? Ooh.
I mean, you can kind
Dish.
You can kind of track what meetings certain people go to and plan your week accordingly.
Hallelujah. Say that again for the people in the back.
Plan your week accordingly, ladies. If there's some trick in the Monday noon meeting, don't go to the Monday noon meeting. For me, sometimes it was the Tuesday 6 p.m. meeting that I had to avoid. But yeah, I really believe in loving people from afar because at the end of the day, we all have the same goal of remaining sober, and stirring up shit and having drama in community is not going to keep anyone sober.
Absolutely. Aaron?
I remember sitting in the nooner on Friday, and I must have had like a month, and the speaker said her sponsor had her write down where she thought she wanted to be at 5 years. And then her sponsor promised her that it would be way beyond what she ever expected for herself. So I took that exercise and thought, okay, I'd write down, the job and, the hot boyfriend and the great vacations and the house. And I thought what she was saying is that I would have a better version of each one of those things at 5 years. And I'm sitting here right now and like, I'm looking at you and there's fucking redwood forest behind you with this like golden hour sun on it. We're doing this podcast in front of a bunch of people that I absolutely love. This is what my 5 years looks like. And this is so different and beyond anything that I could have possibly comprehended while I was sitting in that room thinking about what I was going to get at 5 years. And my heart has never felt more full in my life. So everything that I was scared about, and I didn't say that glibly about being afraid of gay men, that was probably one of my number one fears that I knew I had to get over as I was looking up that hill and saying, what am I going to do different this time? What obstacles do I need to really take on to make this recovery different and make sure this recovery sticks? And the belongingness of this community has been the sole medication that I've needed, that I've always looked for my entire life. And again, I had to let go of what I thought I needed. I don't know what I need. I am less convinced I know what I need now than I ever have in my life, and I'm somehow the most happiest.
Yeah. One of our fellows, Billy B, she's always said, get over your cheap self. And I think that that's what it comes down to, because all the baggage that I had before I found crystal meth and alcohol, compounded by the use and all the wreckage that I created coming in, all of the doubts and insecurity and what have you, and getting to a place where, like, I feel like it's taken a really long time, and I'm still on that journey. But it's like, I love that you said the gay men, the cis women, the people in this program hold space. And that's why we talk about this being a brave space. I know we all want a safe space, but the reality of a safe space is that I can't control every aspect of it. But a brave space means that I have the courage, even through the fear, to talk about things, to put them out. And this is, for me, this has been the absolute gift of this podcast, because it's really affected how I have shown up as a sober man. I'm going to share an experience. I think I was 18 months sober, and there was a gentleman visiting a meeting in Castro at the country club, and he got up to get his 5-year chip. And when he got his 5-year chip, he gave it to me, and he said, when you get 5 years, you give this to someone else. And so I'm all thinking, 5 years? That's a lot of time. But when I got my 5 years, I gave it to my friend Garland. And he got 5 years and gave it to another friend. And I'm like, I don't know if the chip's still going, but it's the promise. I mean, it's like, it requires work, but it's like, it's something that, like, we can do. Like, something that we don't talk about a lot is, like, you know, you don't have to pick up and use again no matter what. Even if you want to, you don't have to. That is the gift of this. There was a time where I didn't believe that recovery was possible the way that I had used drugs. Let's talk about the fellowship. Let's talk about fellowshipping. What does it mean to you?
How appropriate.
I know.
We're finding it.
I know, exactly. Let's talk about fellowship. What does it mean to you? And then after that was like, if there's anyone else who has any comment or anything that they want to add to the conversation, by all means. We have this over there, because he doesn't really need to talk in it. He's just the producer. And he sits there and looks pretty. Hi, go ahead. Anyone who wants to start?
Thank you.
I mean, I'll add, because I really like the point about brave space also. I think calling it a brave space really sets us up more for success when thinking about just going into society, whether it's with other sober people, with normies, with people outside your identity group. Because, I mean, there's definitely meetings still to this day that people say some wild ass shit. And sometimes it's racially insensitive. Sometimes it's sexist. Sometimes it's homophobic. And obviously I think a lot of people want to, like, pull off their hoop rings and throw punches, but, like, we have to navigate that in a sober way. On the topic of fellowship, I mean, I could talk about the girls all day, every day, because for me, so much of my experience in this world is surrounded by sisterhood. Definitely the fellowship, something that another member shared in another meeting, is like having sponsorship family meetings. And I definitely have, like, my group chats with my sober girls, and, you know, just checking, we all have each other's locations. So even if they are sucking dick on a Friday, like, I can go, okay, you're in the TL. I know where you're at.
You can tell where they're stuck in dick. I love it.
Well, you know, I mean, I know that you live in Embarcadero. So if you're not there at 10 p.m. on a Friday, what are you doing? But for me, like, that sisterhood and that bond overall is really, really critical. And this program is really something for a long time. I mean, there's friends of mine that are now in prison. There's friends of mine that are now no longer in San Francisco. And some way I, like, still have contact with them, and I can still check in on them. And it's really just the relationship and bond of wanting to remain sober for another day. Mm-hmm. And that's really beautiful, and something you don't find in a lot of other social circles.
As Sage was talking, I was kind of just thinking, like, how did I get to the point where I became so comfortable with fellowship? And I remember I grew up Catholic, and every Sunday, we had this thing called the fellowship hall at church, where we would all go after Mass and, like, have to hang out and have donuts and talk to people. And me and my sister wanted to kill ourselves. So, like, the word fellowship, like, always just, like, made my, like, the hair on the back of my neck stand up. But I can't separate fellowship from the idea of service. And that was sort of my entree into being comfortable with folks, like having a job to do. and showing up and meeting people through that service. Again, the word organic is what comes to mind. Just like now, I feel so comfortable sort of hanging out with everybody in a way that I never have before. But service was like, that was the front door for me to get that comfort.
You know, you saying that brings up for me, early recovery for me, I really believed that people didn't want me around.
Right.
You know, I was in my head. And so service, especially like I would take greeting commitments because that forced you to have to say hi to me.
Yeah.
Like I'm part of the process or whatever. But
it's the best commitment.
Service, no, it was great. But service was great because you also start to meet like-minded individuals. You get to see who's working.
You get to bitch about the same people.
Exactly, and find commonality. If anybody wants to participate in the conversation, do not feel confined to what we're talking about now. Any of the questions that I put, if there's something about the first 5 years that you've experienced that you might want to share, and don't feel pressure because it's like I'm really enjoying the conversation. I never know how this is going to unfold, but these two lovelies, have been so gracious to kind of share, to get vulnerable. I mean, it's not an easy thing. I mean, talking about dick on a podcast.
We've got to earn that explicit rating.
Absolutely. Are you kidding? No, I just ask Jordan if Anthony's usually not ready for me because that's what I'm here for.
I mean, I don't think it's that vulnerable. I think a lot of us have sucked dick with or without Crystal.
Yeah, but to talk about it, because there are still folks that don't want to talk. This is exactly how the podcast goes all the time. We start talking about God, and then it ends up being about dick.
Can I add to I think one of the most important things that my sponsor has told me is that you cannot replace Crystal with dick for being your higher power.
Say that again.
Ultimately, she said dick cannot be your higher power.
Absolutely. Well, exactly. I mean, we all have, yeah. I mean, I don't have that problem, but it's like I understand that some people struggle.
Wow.
Yeah, I understand that some people struggle, and it's okay. It's completely fine.
Maybe I should go to Coda.
No. That's not my problem. I have a higher power that I love. I'm sitting in this stool, and I just have to say, like, back at our regular studios at the country club, we have to stack a couple of chairs so we'll be high enough. We're taking these with us. It's not old behavior if you're still doing it. It's like, these are mine. So I thought, let's see, do I have another question? Oh, actually, I want to ask you about boundaries, because when I came in, I struggled desperately with them. Like, not just setting boundaries, but living them myself. Like, and it was unheard of for you to set boundaries. What? Like, when you said your sponsor had set that boundary, like, was there any issue? Like, were you like, because I probably would have been like, oh, you don't want to sponsor me? Fuck you, I'm leaving. And there have been people, because we don't need excuses to not do this. Mm-hmm. But you give me one, and see, these bitches are not here for me. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Go ahead. Was it that easy? Was it
set the boundaries?
No, it wasn't easy. I mean, and I'm definitely not somebody who ever says no, or at least initially when I started. I think I'm a little bit better at it now. But I was just, give me whatever things you need me to do. Give me any tasks that I can support you with, and I got you. And both in the fellowship and also just like in work, I've learned the power of saying no. But initially, yeah, when she said no, I only do one a year, I'm like, oh, stupid bitch.
Was that uncomfortable? Like, this idea of the power of saying no? Because it would seem like it's super easy to say no. But is that ever uncomfortable for you?
No. I mean, when you asked the question, my first response was,
no, I'm not talking
my big problem was I exuded this air of get the fuck away from me. So it's like I didn't have problem setting boundaries because nobody tried to step across them. And my therapist likes to call it counterdependence, where I'm just, I think a lot of us have had points in our lives where we're pushing folks away because we don't want to be abandoned. So this time around, it has really been around how do I open up, access to me in a way that doesn't immediately want me to shut that door again. Yeah.
Okay. I think maybe for me, what I'm getting at, because there was no problem telling people what I don't want, but I'll give an example. Okay, so we use the country club. If you've ever been to the country club, I'm going to tell this story and then we'll wrap up. If you've ever been to the country club, the way it was before it was remodeled, it was very kind of like home, like there were couches and people chilled or whatever. And we would spend all our days there and we'd be talking at top levels about whatever. And then someone would come in who we maybe didn't deal with and join in. And I'm like, no, you can't do that. And for me, I had to learn, like with character defects, like gossiping, things of that nature or whatever, to get to a place where I'm not, it's not that I was going to stop it. I wasn't going to stop it, but I have to be mindful who I'm doing it around. And it was like, and for me, the lesson was, it wasn't about setting boundaries, but living them myself. Like I tell you through my actions and how I show up, how I want to be treated. And if I'm acting a certain way, it's kind of like, and I'll say this because I can say this as a black man, using the N-word. I can't get upset with other people using the N-word if I'm using it all the time. Not everybody agrees with that, but this is just my opinion. Don't get me wrong. When I need to accent something, I will definitely use it because that's my prerogative. But it's just that I can't expect people to act a certain way around me if I'm acting that way. If I'm just out of my mind, then that's how people are going to receive me, and they may respond in kind. So yeah,
That's interesting. That is an interesting comment because I've definitely noticed in this community, I'm someone who I'm like, oh, you just have an issue with me because I'm a tranny. And then you hear all the gay boys saying the word tranny. And I'm like, no. But that's an interesting point around like, you kind of have to model the behavior you want to receive in return.
Oh, absolutely. Because some people don't, they don't care. They don't have to care. That's privilege. They don't have to care. And it's not that I feel like I need to educate you because that's what Google is for. But again, I need to set that's about setting a clear boundary. And that clear boundary is it's not just saying the words, but it's living, it's acting and being a certain way. I want to thank you too for being a part of this. You were amazing.
Thank you.
I love you. Thank you all for joining us. This is special. It's like I can't wait for Anthony to listen and see how well I did. Let's see. Oh, I have the script. We're going to land the plane. This is what landing the plane looks like. The Castro Country Club is a safe and sober community center for all people and a refuge for the LGBTQ recovery community. We provide programs and services that help change their lives by supporting personal growth. Our vision is to reduce the suffering of addiction by connecting people to community, opportunity, and support. You can find more information, including all the ways to contact us at www.castrocountryclub.org/podcast. I messed that up. And tune in every Wednesday at 8 p.m.-ish. We go live on our Castro Country Club Facebook and YouTube channels. And look for at the CCC wherever you listen to podcasts. I want to thank Jordan for being an amazing producer, Steven, and also, oh my gosh, Jason. No, I was calling him Justin earlier. And also Brandon, our assistant manager. I'm old. Okay. Thank you.
Yes,
and yeah, I was waiting for you to do the noise and shut me up.